Welcome back to the Derek Smith Spiel. It has been a very, very long time since I have posted on this podcast. The wrestling season has kept me busy. Now that the wrestling season is over, it was a very successful year, by the way. Shout out to everyone on the Letchworth wrestling team. Historic year. I believe it was 22 dual meet victories. That is a record for Letchworth Central High School, and we were ranked 5th in the state in small school. Proud of everyone on the team. Anyone listening from Letchworth, if you know someone from the wrestling team, run into them, give them a congratulations. Everyone on that team contributed. Now that the wrestling season is over, I have more time outside of school. I am going to do as many interviews as possible, and I'm going to start weekly updates. My weekly updates will be focused mostly on the MLB, UFC, and NFL. I don't really expand much into the NBA or NHL. Those will be the big three, the MLB, UFC, and NFL. So we're just going to get right to it. Starting with the MLB, spring training has kicked up. A lot of injuries, which is kind of concerning. When I asked at Letchworth, Officer Ivan, Deputy Carrasquillo, he is a huge baseball fan, baseball card collector. He played at GCC, college baseball at GCC. He said it is concerning. It's just trying to jump into it, expecting to pitch full speed that early. And yeah, it's really difficult seeing these big names going down before the season even starts. I saw Garrett Cole. I know the Mets are hurting. Maybe it's just a New York problem. But as far as spring training, that's the big news. But what I saw that I found most interesting and even more concerning, excuse me, Pete Rose stated in his last interview, he believed, this is a quote in his last interview, "I've come to the conclusion, I hope I'm wrong, that I'll make it to the Hall of Fame after I die." A little background on Pete Rose. He is the MLB's career leader in hits and singles. I've never watched him play, but everything I've heard about him, his intensity is unmatched on the field. He takes winning as seriously, if not more seriously, than Michael Jordan. If he doesn't win, he feels it's a failure. As far as the rules of the Hall of Fame, he is not in the Hall of Fame, despite being the MLB career leader in hits and singles by a long shot. Nobody's even close. One of the best competitors kept out of the Hall of Fame because he was betting. Sports gambling. It's a huge issue, specifically now that betting's so much more accepted across America. Pete Rose stated that he only bet on his team to win, but it still kept him out of the Hall of Fame. Before he died, he was doing a documentary type thing and really rallying so that he could get in the Hall of Fame. He didn't see the purpose of getting in after he had died. He said there's no purpose for it. The whole point of making it to the Hall of Fame is to celebrate your career with your family, and if he's not alive, he can't do that, obviously. Unfortunately, he did not get in before he died. The rules for the Hall of Fame, as of right now, stand that a ban on a player ends after his death. So Pete Rose will never experience making it to the Hall of Fame, but hopefully for his legacy, he does make it. Moving on to the UFC, it was UFC 313 this weekend. A huge light heavyweight title fight. It seems that every fight with Alex Pereira is a huge fight. I did actually watch the fight. We got the pay-per-view, and it was a good fight. It was very close, not as action-packed as you'd expect. They really didn't brawl as much. It was more of a chess match, very conservative. In that way, it was a little disappointing. But let's talk about the narrative before this main event, the narrative before the title fight the narrative on Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira, when he came into the UFC, he was always dead quiet. Not even because he didn't speak English. That isn't his first language. He just wasn't really a showman. He let his fighting put on the show for himself. Lately, you see a ton more interviews, a ton more of him dancing in his training room. He's all over. He's everywhere. He's got this just built up aura around him. But his rise to stardom is so quick, you almost wonder if he lost that edge. That's what everyone was saying. It's the old saying, it's been all around about Alex Pereira. It's hard to wake up and train when you're sleeping in silk sheets. And everyone thought that's what happened to Alex Pereira. He came into the UFC at 36 and became a double champ. He is on the highest of high, raised to stardom quicker than anyone in the UFC. Already talked about as one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time. How do you keep your edge when you're doing that? It was very interesting and unfortunate at the same time that this is the narrative around him in such a big fight for him, a UFC light heavyweight title fight. Now, the fight itself, personally, I did not see anything that said he didn't have the edge to compete. I didn't see anything that said he wasn't hungry for it. He was extremely frustrated after the loss. He felt he won that fight, and me watching it, I thought he won that fight. I thought it would be split decision. Alex Pereira gets it. I thought it would come down to what the third round was scored. Turns out it was a unanimous decision, and Ankalaev got it. It's frustrating for Alex Pereira, but at the same time, when a fight's that close, it's really difficult to leave it in the hands of the judges and hope for a win. Obviously, you don't work for a decision win, and he wasn't fighting for a decision win, but that's, at the end of the day, that's what happened. It came down to the judges, and the judges broke his heart, took his UFC light heavyweight title away from him. Nina Drama brought up an interesting point in this whole narrative built up around Alex Pereira. She said, when you become a champion, it forces you to change. Because when you're a UFC champion, when you're on all the main cards, it isn't just about fighting anymore. It's about selling the pay-per-view. You have to do more interviews. You have to do more photo shoots. There's going to be more cameras on you at all times. I don't think Alex Pereira lost his edge. I really don't. And I think this loss will only inspire him to, or give him that extra edge that he doesn't need. But it'll just give him that extra fire. It'll be interesting to see. Dana White says there's almost sure to be a rematch. Now, last but not least, we are moving on to the NFL. And this will be the longest part of this weekly update because a lot went down. It started off, the Eagles released Darius Slay. Darius Big Play Slay, the OG Big Play Slay. I always enjoyed watching him on the Lions. Very streaky player. But that kind of comes with the position of defensive back. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. Next, the Bills released Von Miller. He's another one. It'll be interesting to see where he goes at his age. Unfortunately, he may not go anywhere, even with his history, his legal history. So, Von Miller, a player to watch out for. But T. Higgins, he has been tagged by the Bengals. That is huge for the Bengals. Joe Burrow having two huge targets in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. That makes a huge difference. Joe Burrow is a phenomenal player. he wouldn't have had the same season had T. Higgins not been there. He doesn't get all the shine because he's on the opposite side of the field of Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But if T. Higgins was on another team, he might be talked about as a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. He's that good. He complements Jamar Chase very well. In order to keep that offense that was top in the league last year, signing him was huge for the Bengals. Now they just need to improve on defense, and they can be top contenders again. Joey Bosa, he was released from the Chargers. Bosa has had 72 career sacks in his 9 years with the Chargers, ranking him second in the franchise. The Chargers ended up releasing him most likely because it saved them $25.6 million in cap space. Where will Bosa go next? It will be an interesting question. Bosa himself said he wants to play with his brother in San Francisco. That would be a scary combo. Keeping it on the defensive line, Max Crosby became the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL history, signing a 3-year, $106.5 million extension. Next up, this happened earlier in the week. Deebo Samuel being traded to the Commanders. The Commanders get Deebo Samuel, and the San Francisco 49ers get a 5th-round pick. This seems really bad for the 49ers at first glance. Giving away Deebo Samuel for a 5th-round pick, it almost seems insulting to Deebo Samuel. However, the 49ers wanted and needed to clear up money. And they already have depth at wide receiver. They have Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Parcells, and Juwan Jennings. So it feels like they slighted Deebo a little bit, but if you look at the greater good of the team and the fact that Deebo underperformed last year, it makes sense why they wanted to get rid of him and clear space. Plus, we can see who the 5th-round pick turns into. But on the Commanders side, this was huge. Deebo Samuel will complement Scary Terry very well. And it also gives the Commanders an extremely unique weapon. They can use Deebo out of the backfield. They can use him on wide receiver screens, a check down to Terry's long ball. They can move Deebo Samuel around wherever they want. He's going to be a huge weapon and propel the Commanders' offense even more. So this was huge, a great trade for the Commanders. A great trade. Keeping it in the NFC, Matthew Stafford re-signs with the Rams. Now this one, this seemed really hyped up for everything it turned out to be. Everyone was wondering where Stafford was going to go, if the Rams were going to keep Stafford, what they were going to do. The only logical thing to do was to re-sign Matthew Stafford. It was the only logical thing. The Rams were the only team that made it look competitive against the reigning Super Bowl champs in the form of the Philadelphia Eagles. Re-signing Stafford was a no-brainer. Now, the reason some of the rumors may started was because McVay allowed Matthew Stafford to go to Matthew Stafford's agent to go to other teams and see what they would be paying Stafford. So he wanted to make sure that if he was going to re-sign Stafford, he could match the offers of other teams, so there was no doubt Stafford would go anywhere. It was a smart move by McVay, and it caused a little bit of press, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because Stafford is back on the team, and the Rams are going to be a competitive team this year. They're going to be a problem. And there's going to be another reason they're going to be a problem. That's where Davante Adams is going. The Jets released Davante Adams, and the Rams picked him right up. So not only are the Rams getting back Matthew Stafford, they pick up the extremely reliable wide receiver in Davante Adams. But the Jets as a whole, they look shaky. They released Davante Adams and he was picked up. And they are allowing Alan Lazard to look for a trade partner. And at the same time, there's a lot of questions around their starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they had a Green Bay team over there with Lazard, Adams, and Rodgers, and they didn't do anything with that. Now it's just Rodgers. It looks like it'll be another rough year for the Jets. But the biggest team of them all, not even the Rams, but in the same division, the Seahawks. The Seahawks had a wild week, a detrimental week. It makes you wonder if they're having a rebuild season. They started by releasing Tyler Lockett on Wednesday. Now, they released Tyler Lockett, who was second in the Seahawks franchise for receptions, second in receiving yards, and second in receiving touchdowns. All of those only behind legend Steve Largent. They released him because they could not restructure a deal that would leave them with any money to re-sign or sign other players. So unfortunately, they just had to part ways with him. In the parting of ways, they were going to have a celebration of his phenomenal career in Seattle. During that celebration, DK Metcalf requested a trade. So at the time on Wednesday, it looked like they lost their two best wide receivers. And I was thinking, well, this isn't horrible. They've still got Smith and Jigba. They've still got Kenneth Walker. They've still got Geno Smith, which turns out they don't. They traded him away too. That was... Oh, what night was that? That was on Friday. On Friday night, they traded away Geno Smith. So now it's Smith and Jigba and Kenneth Walker. They don't know who their starting quarterback's going to be. And it just leaves you wondering what's going to happen in Seattle. At first, I thought, okay, having DK gone isn't bad. He's leading the NFL for most penalties by a wide receiver. Most of those are after the whistle. And he also didn't even have the decency to wait after the celebration of Tyler Lockett's career to say he wanted a trade. You don't want that toxicity. But you do want a quarterback. They did end up getting a third-round pick for Geno Smith, but it just leaves you with a lot of questions for the Seahawks. They had a decent year last year, and now you just don't know what'll happen. You hate to assume the worst, but it looks like the worst is on them. DK Metcalf, he did end up getting traded. He was traded to the Steelers. The Seahawks will get a second-round pick for DK, and they are swapping their 6th and 7th round picks with the Steelers. So it was a rough week to be a Seahawks fan. If you know one, reach out to them and check in. But that was all the news from March 2nd to March 9th. I will catch up with you next Monday. This episode was brought to you by yours truly, Derek Smith, with help from the voice memos and Spotify Podcasters app. For more content like this, you can continue listening to the Derek Smith Spiel on Spotify, or you can listen on my YouTube channel at Derek Smith Stock 13. There you'll find my podcast and sports betting videos on top of that. If you're a fan of my sports betting videos, you can also see highlights of those on my TikTok account. You can find that by searching at SmithStock5 again on TikTok. Enjoy collecting cards? If so, check out my Collects account at Derek Smith Stock to get deals on quality cards. For updates on everything I mentioned, follow my Instagram account. You can find that by searching Derek Smith Stock 13 on Instagram. Not interested in sports? Then go to YouTube and watch Dylan Smith Outdoors YouTube channel. Search Dylan Smith Outdoors, where there are plenty of outdoor content videos, including hunting, catching, trail cam and tree stand setup, cooking, and plenty of laughs in between. Need your lawn sprayed? Whether it's weeds or insects, Greenwood Ecologics has you covered. If you need help making your lawn greener than your neighbors, call Greenwood Ecologics at 585-739-1610. I repeat, 585-739-1610. Finally, thank you for listening to this production of the Derek Smith Spiel. Every view or listener is appreciated. I'll catch you later.